This episode of Lobbing Scorchers is sponsored by Full Pull Wines, a Seattle-based cellar. Not only are they a local company, but they've been supporting independent Seattle soccer media since 2011 and are run by Sounders fans. They offer the best boutique wines in the world to members of their mailing list with special focus on their home, the Pacific Northwest. Their model is simple. 1, they email compelling offers. 2, you request bottles that sound appealing. 3, your wine arrives at their Soto warehouse and is ready for pickup or shipping. Their Soto tasting room is also open to the public. If you're interested in joining their mailing list or learning more about them, visit fullpullwines.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 52 of Lobbing Scorchers. This is Ari Lillianwall. I got producer Noah here with me. And Noah, we've got a dub pod today, but it's actually a tragic and somber occasion as we lay down this dub pod. How are you feeling, man? I mean, we've been corresponding over the past hour. So, I mean, you know how I feel, but now that we're back together again, how are you feeling about what just took place?
Well, you know, Ari, I've been in some tragic situations, but none more tragic than laying down one of the best podcasts we've ever recorded just for it to get corrupted. We both emotionally went through a lot, but just like the Sounders, we will be rising from the ashes and putting together probably a performance even better than this 6-game win streak.
Yeah, that's right, folks. We already laid down this entire dub pod. It was actually our longest pod in history. It was an hour and a half. And we both looked at each other right as we were done recording, and we both were like, I think that was the best audio we have ever laid down. And of course, that's the episode. That's the episode that gets corrupted, and it will never be heard.
It will never be heard,
which is it's kind of profound to think about in a way. But we're definitely not going to let that stop us from putting out the dub pod. That's how dedicated we are to the dub pod. We're going to just lay it down again. Our 6th straight dub pod, by the way.
Some may say too many, not me though.
We're just dub after dub after dub over here. We're stacking them. The Seattle Sounders, that's right, have won yet again. What else is new? This time cruising to a nice little 2-0 victory at Lumen Field over St. Louis City SC. As I said, it's their 5th straight MLS win, 6th straight across all competitions. And the vibes really couldn't be much better at the moment. We're going to break down the result. We're going to break down the goals. We're going to hit the agenda check. It's a good agenda check this week. We've got some new agendas after the conclusion of a couple of our other previous agendas. So looking forward to that. We're going to take your questions and also preview Saturday's upcoming matchup against LAFC. That's a huge game. And then later on in the show, we've got some big news to talk about around MLS. We're going to talk about Cavan Sullivan's debut for the Philly Union. Youngest ever player to debut in a major sports league. So that's obviously generating a lot of headlines, not just within MLS, but just around the sports world. So we're going to talk about that. And then, as always, we're going to hit our winners and losers from around MLS on episode 52. But before we get into all that, I wanted to let you know that Lobbing Scorchers is a part of the Sounder at Heart podcast network. If you want to get the best independent Seattle soccer coverage, consider supporting us by going to sounderatheart.com/LS. That's sounderatheart.com/LS. Scroll down to subscribe and support to get 30 days completely free. Every sign up through our link helps support and grow this show.
Yeah, it's even better now because there's more podcasts being added to the Sounder at Heart podcast network by the week. 2 of our friends have their own podcast about the rain now that just debuted on the Sounder at Heart network. It's called The Cooler Guild. Go check that out. Have been loving it. But man, you get such a good deal. 30 days for free. Go over sounderatheart.com/LS. We get money. You get content. What more could you need?
Well said, Noah. As always, we'd like to thank all our paid subs. We love and appreciate every single one of you. Those of you who have made the migration with us with our new partnership at Sounder at Heart, it's much appreciated. The support means a lot to us, and we appreciate everyone who tunes in every week. And lastly, if you're listening to this and you haven't done so yet, subscribe to the Lobbing Scorchers YouTube.
Sub to the YouTube. We're up to 270 subs. The road to 300 is alive and well. We've summited 10K views. And, you know,
No, I was doing some math. On this.
A little bit.
You're
not much of a mathematician, so I know this was hard for you.
Neither of us are math guys, but I know enough math to know that, we get on average about 700 to 800 people who listen to every episode. We have 270 YouTube subs, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of those YouTube subs are random people outside of our normal listener base. So that means that there's probably around, conservatively, about 500 to 600 people who are listening to this right now who haven't subbed to the YouTube. So if every single one of those people subscribes, we'll have 28,000 subs.
That's flawless math.
That's just math. Okay?
That's how it goes.
So anyway, in all seriousness, appreciate everyone who has subbed to the YouTube and helped us grow our presence on that platform. All right, let's get into this dub pod and our game review. But before we do that, we did have an MLS news item that broke today that is quite significant for the future of the league. MLS announced its updated roster rules today, and there's some big stuff on there as far as giving teams more financial flexibility and giving more leeway as far as adding more talented players to these rosters. I'm just going to read off what I thought was the most important tidbit, and then we can talk about it a little bit. All MLS rosters can now feature 6 prime roster spots. This adjustment eliminates previous limitations, allowing clubs to utilize all 3 designated players and all 3 U22 initiative player slots, increasing their ability to acquire or retain world-class players and emerging talents. So, I'm not a super big expert I'm not the forefront person to talk to about the minutia of the MLS roster rules.
You're no Tommy Scoops.
I'm no Tommy Scoops, not my area of expertise. I know like the basic idea of it. I know how the DP rules work and the TAM and GAM and what they are, what they represent, all that. But there's so much to it that like I can't really explain to the average layman and frankly don't understand myself. But as I understand this, this is essentially just adding mechanisms for teams to add more high-level players than we currently have right now. So as it stands right now, if you have 3 senior designated players on signed to your first team, you can only sign 1 U22 initiative player. This means you can have those 3 DPs and 3 U22 initiative players, and the what you spend on those players doesn't count against the salary cap. So I'm all for anything that frees up teams to be able to bring in more players like this, and it'll be interesting to see how different teams use and strategize these new mechanisms, because there's if you go into the post on the MLS website that details it, there's a lot of different ways that you can wrangle it, and it's always interesting to see how different teams kind of do that.
Every Thursday, let's get skin to it with dermatologist Dr. Sandy Skotnicki and personal stylist and beauty enthusiast Marlo Sutton for a new episode of Skin to It, where we guide you through the maze of skincare and cut through that noise to help you achieve your healthiest skin. Skin to It, a podcast brought to you by Bioderma.
Yeah, I'm stoked to see, specifically, I think about teams like Philly Union or FC Dallas who have been so youth-focused in the past. If they stick with 2 DPs, they can sign 4 U22 players and then also get $1 million in allocation money. So it opens up this like really fun door to experiment with the way that rosters are built in MLS by going super heavy on youth. Like we've seen New York City FC do this as well. And I don't know, I'm stoked. I'm excited for it. I know that it's not the big, like adding a DP change that a lot of people wanted to see. But at the end of the day, man, this is more talent in MLS. This is investing more in bringing players here in their prime or prepping them for their prime. This is a pretty big deal, but also just like it shows the growth of the league.
Well, and I think the idea of the U22 initiative makes sense in that, like, when you think about where MLS is at right now, it's a selling league in a lot of ways. And
Absolutely.
so I think the U22 initiative is a mechanism that, you know, the idea is they're trying to incentivize teams to bring in younger talent and develop them here, and maybe, you know, ideally move them on to a bigger league at some point, and then use those transfer fees that they get to further invest in their roster, and it can create a cycle like that. So I think it's a positive development. I think everyone who follows the league ultimately wants to see these roster limitations loosened up and teams have more financial flexibility. Realistically, I think everyone knows that's the main way that the league is going to grow ultimately. So I think this is a good step towards that, even if it's not like the ultimate step we all might want to see it take.
Yeah, very stoked.
All right, let's get into this game review, because this is another good dub for Seattle. I'm excited to break it down. Let's do our lineup reaction first. Jordan Morris and Albert Rusnak were back in the starting 11 for this game. Paul Rothrock was once again in the starting 11, so you already know that we support that. Leo Chu was also starting again. You had Christian Roldan back in there, along with Obed in your double pivot. And then the one change was it was a standard back line, except Ymar was on the bench with Jon Bell in his place. We got a Jon Bell cameo in this game, which that would turn out to be significant later on. But yeah, Ymar, JP, De La Vega, all on the bench. De La Vega didn't play at all, and I'm assuming that's with an eye towards this LAFC game on Saturday. Yeah. The fact that he didn't feature at all in this game, that makes me hopeful that we might get to see De La Vega for maybe, hopefully something like a 50 to 60 minute shift instead of these second half cameos that he's been doing. And the fact that he didn't play in this game makes me hopeful that we might see that on Saturday. As for the game itself, I thought Seattle controlled this game pretty much throughout, and Albert Rusnak at the forefront of it again. He is so locked in. Couldn't be more locked
literally.
in. The dimes that this guy is hitting right now. He could have had an assist pretty early in the first half on the free kick that he sent in that Jackson Reagan won the header, and Tim Parker, who becomes an important character in all this later. Tim Parker cleared that one off the line, but another just dead-eye free kick from Albert Rusnak. That was inches from being a goal and another assist. The ball he put in for Leo Chu, where Leo Chu was making a run down the left side, and just the angles that he's hitting these passes with right now, like the one in the Revs game where he hit Jordan from that crazy angle perfectly in stride. Yeah. This time it was one through Leo Chu, where just the vision to see that pass, technical ability to execute it, world class. He could have had a couple of early assists. Seattle get their opener in the 27th minute on an own goal, however. It was Alex Roldan who sent in the cross for Jordan, and Tim Parker, tragically for St. Louis City, had to deflect off him into his own net. And this was a hilarious stat, and honestly one of the craziest MLS stats I've ever seen. This was the fourth straight game between these teams that had a St. Louis City own goal, two of which were by Parker, but that is an MLS record, and I don't think that's ever going to be broken.
No, there's no way. And it's a new bit. We literally get to unlock a new bit about a team. That's even better.
The odds of 4 straight own goals against the same team are infinitesimal, and it's crazy too when you think about, like, that's the first 4 games that these two teams have played against each other, and St. Louis City has scored on themselves in all 4 games, including 2 of them coming off the same guy.
It's even funnier too, knowing our history with St. Louis City fans and the fraud watch that we had. The fact that, like, they're just bamming on themselves while we bam on them.
I don't know about that. Yeah. Not too popular in the city of St. Louis. No. Seattle got their second goal of the game in the 49th minute from an unlikely source, Jon Bell. Jon Bell with the goal.
Jamaican legend.
Rusnak again with another perfect free kick into the box.
That free kick was so good. So good.
It was both that one and the one that he hit to Jackson Reagan. Like, you can't place those any better. And the way I watch a whole lot of the league a lot, so I have a pretty good read on like who's excelling at what at any given time, and I really think like his dead ball service right now is the best in the league. Like in this last period, these last 8 to 10 games where Seattle has been on fire and he's been on fire, his dead ball service has been the best in the league. Jon Bell, he went up for that. He got
Air Bell.
He got my attention. We're going to talk about him.
He was
in the
ringing.
Agenda check, but I feel like he did really well on defense in this game. I can't think of any egregious mistake that he made, and then the play he made to sky over his defender and finish that to the far post. Great finish. So that was good and intriguing to see from Jon Bell. Not who I would have picked to get on the score sheet for this game.
He almost scored again as well.
Yeah, he did. A great game from Jon Bell. It was unfortunate that Seattle didn't get a couple more goals in this game. There's a couple pretty tragic sequences that could have been additional goals, but weren't quite. There was the one where Jordan got out in transition, and he could have laid it off to Paul Rothrock.
That one killed me, Ari.
I think that killed both of us as purveyors of the Paul Rothrock agenda. Jordan and Paul Rothrock are basically on a 2-on-1 against that guy. Jordan made the wrong decision. I saw some takes out there that like he actually couldn't have laid it off or it's the right decision. I mean, you lay that off every time. But I do think there's two sides of it, because there has been, I think it's been a theme in Jordan's career at times where he is too unselfish,
Yeah.
So as much as it pained me to see Paul Rothrock not get an open net goal, that would have been like probably the easiest goal he's ever scored. I don't mind Jordan shooting in that situation. I like to see him aggressive. And also with the context of the game and Seattle being up 2 goals at the time, I'm not going to get on him too much, but I am pretty sad that we didn't get a Paul Rothrock goal.
Yeah, our agenda is, I mean, listen, he's a starter. Paul Rothrock has cemented himself. He doesn't need anyone else. He doesn't need any help to advocate for him. But man, if you were standing next to me in the stadium, I was screaming, "Pass the Rothrock! Pass the Rothrock!" I felt bad for my seating neighbors.
We were all thinking it, but unfortunately, no goal on that play. Then the other one was Jordan got out running again. He found Rui Diaz for a wide open shot off a cross that Roman Berkey made a pretty insane save on. Rui Diaz he's snake bit right now. He's had a couple of these where he hits it pretty much as well as you can hit it. And in those situations, if the goalkeeper makes the save on you, you kind of just tip your cap. He's had 2 of those in the last few weeks. So he seems like he's getting in good spots. He's getting good chances. Like that chance, for instance, that's more of the Rui Diaz, like bread and butter type chance that you want to see him getting. So that was nice to see, even as he continues to play in this super sub role. But that kind of, I feel bad for Roman Berkey. Yeah. This guy's one of the best goalkeepers of like this recent generation, as I understand it. And he was just under siege in this game, making all these crazy saves. That's basically what he's been doing all season. That's all that when we talk about the reasons why St. Louis City overachieved last year, that's honestly probably the biggest reason, is because week after week he was making these crazy game-changing saves. But the guy, he can only do so much. Seattle really could have had 3 or 4 goals in this game, but Berkey was playing out of his mind again. He's just a very good goalkeeper. I can't even lie. But that was that. Pretty comfortable win. Seattle's 10th win of the season. They're now 10-7-7 with 37 points and 6th in the Western Conference. Now just 1 point off a top 4 seed. All right, so I'm going to lay down my rapid fire takeaways on this game. We can talk about a little bit. And then I had a take from the national pundits that we're going to debate.
Better get in there.
Yeah. First takeaway. Rusnak is still just, he's so locked.
Oh, dude, he's insanely
so
locked in.
He's, I think he's been like his dead ball service, I think, has been the best in the league, but I just think his form in general, like he's as hot as any number 10 that you could name right now. And, it's not getting talked about that much, but if you just look at how he's producing and like he really could have had, it should have been at least 2 assists and maybe one more on top of that. Like he's had so many near opportunities where he could already be up at like 15 to 20 assists with just like a little luckier finishing, So that was one takeaway. Also, Schmetz, low key, kind of locked in. Jeremiah wrote about it on Sounder at Heart, which is a great website. But it just seems like Schmetz this is what Jeremiah was saying, like Schmetz is kind of just pressing all the right buttons right now between his lineup decisions and his substitutions, which he's shown a propensity for making a little bit earlier subs, which I think is something that we both had talked about.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give him his credit on that because, people were on Schmetz a little bit earlier this season, and
that's an understatement. We were on him too.
We were on him too, but there was a little bit of a Schmetz out sentiment
for sure
going on, and we never really. I don't think either of us were ever on that train, but I think it kind of what it underscores to me is it's just like you should be careful about being reactionary over one bad run of form. I know if you looked at Seattle's points per game dating back a while, it wasn't really good. But I mean, just when you have a coach that's as proven as Schmetz is, that's a local legend. I don't know. I just think it's going to take more than one middling run of form to make a move like that. Because if you really, I know how much we complained about it this season, but realistically, this team was more on like a 1.1 to 1.3 points per game pace, which is not great and not up to the standards that we expect from this club. But I think for Schmetz, for that to ever actually happen, it would have to be like a catastrophe where the team is like way down on the table and like below a point per game type stuff. But
I could have seen like a potential this season for him going, but it's very clear that he was able to turn it around. And like, I mean, we've mentioned this in the past with all the drama, the TV, the intrigue, the way that he was able to handle that and manage all of those players. If he had been booted basically around that time was when most of the people were calling for that, or even before then, I can't even imagine what some new coach coming into a locker room and you've got to deal with Nuhu and Raul, going into the locker room, throwing a tantrum. You've got Leo Chu throwing a tantrum. Like that could have legitimately made the season so much worse.
Yeah. And I think looking back on it now, it seems like all the drama kind of galvanized the team, I don't know if there's anything actually to that, but it does seem like some of the turnaround in form that we've seen kind of started around all the time that the team seemed to be devolving into a reality TV show. So maybe that was just the boost that they needed to come out of this. Other takeaway, the depth that we're seeing is just really impressive right now. I mean, in this game, you had a situation where Rui Diaz and JP both came off the bench.
Yeah.
Yeimar and De La Vega didn't even play. And I feel like it's the first time in a few years where this team has been healthy enough to actually employ the type of squad rotation to manage the fixture congestion that you always get in MLS. Pretty much you always go into a season thinking that you're going to that you have all this plan on how you're going to rotate and handle these games. And then guys get hurt, guys go on international duty, and your plans just kind of blow up in your face. This is the first time in a while where we're actually getting to see the things we think about in preseason in action, where, you have a game where Rusnak has to rest. You can plug in De La Vega at the 10. You have a game, say there's a game where Jordan had to rotate out. You could put Raul in, stuff like that. And it just feels like we seldom get to see them actually employ that. And right now they're getting to, and you're kind of seeing what the result of that is.
Yeah, it's impressive. You have people, everyone has stepped up to the plate. This is something that Schmetzer even said in one of his post-game pressers that, look, you have a man like Paul Rothrock who went from the depths of the Defiance bench to a starter, a contributing member, and an important member of the team because he's working hard day in and day out. He appreciates what he has in terms of like, hey, I don't know how many games I'm going to get to play, but I'm just going to work my ass off and I'm going to work on my role. And he said that. He said everyone's been willing to give that. Even Raul, whether he's been hesitant or not or been frustrated, he's now starting to accept, okay, this is my role at this moment, And you need that, especially in MLS with this insanely congested schedule. You had that whole lead up in the Open Cup where they were able to play all their young players who contributed significantly to now they are almost in a final for the Open Cup. Like, everyone is playing their part and everyone's healthy. And this was exactly what the national pundits were kind of saying at the beginning of the year when they were predicting the Sounders to potentially be a Shield contender. They were like, look at all this depth they have. If they can get this to like work like it's working right now, man, they like no one can stop them. And here you go, 6-game win streak, man. Like, that's crazy.
Nuhu was on one in this game.
Yeah.
This was a classic Nuhu game if there ever was one. There were a lot of antics. My favorite one was the bounding run that he embarked on down the left side. He had the arms pumping. He had so much space.
The crowd behind him.
The crowd was doing the Nuhu choo-choo. It was all building up. And then he, whatever he did was not a shot or a cross. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but he absolutely smashed the ball somewhere. It got nowhere close to the goal, and it got nowhere close to a runner for a cross. So, but I think like the Nuhu antics in a game where you're winning are comedic, whereas the Nuhu antics in a game where you're losing or tied and like chasing a game-winning goal, that's when they're infuriating. But for this one, since Seattle was ahead for most of the game, like, I thought that the comedy outweighed how infuriating it might have been.
Yeah, it was pretty silly. I don't know. I felt like he didn't play his worst game or anything, but he was definitely on one. And Brian,
he said after the game, I believe the exact quote was like he subbed him off for playing with too much pizzazz.
Bro has too much swag.
Too much pizzazz. That is one way to put it.
That is, yeah. I was going to ask, I felt like his interplay with Chu was awful this game.
I mean, it is, I feel like it is every time.
Yeah.
That's the setup. And that's a problem. They've been able to work through that, but I mean, we talked about that a lot earlier this season, how when it's the two of them on the left side, it's sort of a black hole in attack. And that was the case this game again. All right, I had this take from the national pundits that I wanted us to debate because, I've been tracking the national pundits. I pay attention to what they say, so you all don't have to. And they still don't care about the Seattle Sounders, which is something I mentioned on the solo pod last week. But I feel like I've gotten a little bit of a better idea on where they're coming from with this. And I think they've made some points that have some validity, but also some that I disagree with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out what they have to say about all this, and then we're just going to talk about like whether we agree or disagree with what they're saying. So basically, the national pundits, Bradley Wright Phillips as one of them, they're acknowledging Seattle's recent winning streak and their turnaround in form of late. But the caveat they're bringing up is, and it's one that I have thought about a little bit, but not in super great detail, is it's basically that Seattle hasn't beaten anybody over this stretch. They're basically beating up on bad teams, and that when they want to see them play good teams and prove it against the good teams before they really believe in and put stock in the idea that Seattle has fully turned around and gotten past their slow start to the season, or that, that they could be a true contender against the league's heavyweights, like LAFC, FC Cincinnati, Inter Miami, the Galaxy, Real Salt Lake, whatever. Like, do they deserve to be in that tier? A lot of the national pundits are still saying no. So let's look at this. I have the opponents that Seattle has beaten over this last little stretch here written down. FC Dallas.
Embarrassing.
Terrible. Chicago Fire.
Bad.
Terrible. New England Revolution. I mean, they at the point Seattle had played them, they had been doing a little better. They had won 4 straight, but on the whole this season, terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
Sac Pub, pretty good, but USL squad. So
yeah, you got to give it. Yeah,
it's not like a win that people are going to be giving you all kinds of credit for. Austin FC,
Wolf out,
terrible. Wolf out. St. Louis City SC,
pretty bad.
Terrible,
fraud,
pretty bad.
Fraudulent.
Fired their coach like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it is a fair point that this has been a soft part of the schedule. They're not wrong. And I think that is something that makes this game against LAFC all the more intriguing, because you definitely, for however much LAFC has not looked like themselves the last 2 weeks, you definitely can't call them a cupcake opponent. So it definitely adds a storyline for Seattle going into that game. And I do think there's an element of that talking point that's a bit of a bullshit caveat, though. First of all, you can only play who's on your schedule, who's in front of you. And also, you know what good teams do when they're playing teams that they're better than and have a talent advantage on? They take care of business. That's what Seattle's been doing. They've been taking care of business. They haven't been drawing these games. They've been taking all 3 points in all these games. They've been winning on the road. So the point is taken from the national pundits. But I would say I don't think that's as much of a slam dunk talking point as they might have you believe.
Yeah, I mean, the B in BWP stands for bad takes. So, I mean, we should have seen this one coming. I'm not saying that the Sounders are equal to LAFC in any means. We'll find out this weekend. I think that they have a pretty good chance of contending, but you can't tell me they drew the Galaxy. They beat the Timbers, who looked pretty good. They lost to RSL, but they also drew to RSL. And that was back when they were playing terribly, And then now you look at their run of form, and they haven't lost a game in, 9 or 10? I don't understand what more you want, You talk about turning a season around, turning your form around, showing your potential. I think, you have people who put them up super high on this pedestal at the beginning of the season. They underperformed at the beginning of the season, and now they're performing up to the standard that everyone expected them to at the beginning of the season. So it's a little confusing how people aren't giving them at least a little bit of credit. We'll see this weekend, genuinely, and Schmetzer seems to understand this, and same with the players, that, this is a big game. This LAFC game is a proving ground, because you do this and then you're going straight into Leagues Cup after this. You can ride that wave. You can ride that momentum. You literally could go win this game, take that off, that 7-game win streak, go into Leagues Cup. Who knows? Maybe you go win Leagues Cup, come back out, and then you get to play LAFC again in an Open Cup. And that could be a pivotal moment for the season.
Absolutely. And I'll be keeping track. I'll be on National Pundit Watch, for the rest of the season, like I always am. Keep you guys apprised of what they're saying and what they're thinking. And when it's necessary, we'll address their talking points here on the show. Let's get into the agenda check, Noah. It's a good agenda check this week.
It's a brand new one.
It's a brand new agenda check. There's new stuff in here. There's a couple of agendas last week that I think reached their conclusion in my written content for Sounder at Heart, which you should subscribe to Sounder at Heart. Read that. I do a written version of the agenda check every single week. But I declared the Rusnak is terrible agenda to be fully dead, which I did see a little bit of pushback on someone was trying to contend that the Rusnak is terrible agenda was not a thing.
They've clearly never been on Twitter.
Yeah, but it was a tweet that I saw. And I mean, I'm just, they were saying it was a good faith debate about his DP versus TAM roster status, which that was a good faith debate. We had that good faith debate on this show. The people who were having that debate were having it in good faith, but there was a lot of Rusnak is terrible takes out there. In fact, Noah, I saw one tweet from someone who said Rusnak is the worst sounder of all time.
That's insane.
Of all time.
That's a crazy take.
I realize one tweet is not you can't generalize a whole subset of people who have a take based off one tweet. But I mean, that type of stuff was out there. This is a team, Noah, that had Emmanuel Cecchini on it at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, Rusnak, whatever you want to say about him, like, worst sounder of all time. I mean, it's just, it got over the top. But that agenda.
Shaori Joseph. Do you remember Shaori Joseph?
I mean, Shaori was actually pretty good, wasn't he? But he just famously got started at striker in the playoffs when he was like a defensive mid.
That's
right?
true. Yeah, I guess he wasn't that bad. I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering.
We could go through the list. There's that guy who was friends with Oba. I can't remember his name. You remember that guy? Like, so, I mean, even before Rusnak turned his season around this season, he was nowhere near that discussion. The Jordan Morris is the number 9. I think that agenda is over. So we've come up with, I got 4 written down here. So let's get into it. The first one, the Jon Bell should get more minutes agenda.
Ooh.
I have this marked agenda status intriguing.
Yeah.
He got my attention. He's only gotten a few hundred minutes this year, but I feel like he's played pretty well defensively, and he scored a goal in this game. And that's like an element of his game that he might have more of than Jackson Reagan and Yamar, who I think are Yamar is a decently goal dangerous center back. Jackson Reagan, he just scored his first MLS goal a couple weeks ago.
A banger.
It was a great goal, but that's an element of his game that I feel like is not fully refined or part of his game as much yet. Jon Bell, this was his like 3rd or 4th career MLS goal already, and he only has had one season, I believe, where he really played a full complement of minutes when he was with New England. Last year with St. Louis, he didn't really play all that much at all. So
what a get-back game for him, though.
Yeah, against his former team, he was talking about how he decided not to celebrate. So I mean, this CB group looks strong right now. I still think that Yamar and Jackson Reagan, whose form I think has improved the last few weeks, that's your first choice pairing. In a first choice 11, but Jon Bell, that's great depth to have, and also Nathan, we forget, but Nathan was considered a pretty solid upper tier starting MLS CB when he was on the Earthquakes. So it's looking like a strong and deep center back group, and I think Jon Bell, he's shown enough, not just because of the goal, but how he's played defensively, that maybe he should be in the rotation a little bit more.
Yeah, it's so nice to have that rotational depth too. Like, the only game that I really remember him playing kind of poorly was that Houston game, that 2-2 draw back in June. But even then, it really wasn't that bad of a performance. And there's been times where we've seen Jackson struggle, and if you know that you can slot in Jon Bell and maybe even have a little bit more attacking presence and threat, like, that's so nice to have. Like, it is honestly a blessing to have such a stacked CB room, and led by Yamar, who's like genuinely one of the best CBs in the entire league.
The Christian Roldan should start at right back agenda. This is not an entirely new agenda. We have talked about it a little bit, but not super extensively. And I think this is one that I think is going to be interesting going forward, because I mean, you would be starting him over his brother Alex, and I have it marked as intriguing and I think strengthened. The more I've thought about this, the more I think that this is actually a great idea for the first choice 11. With De La Vega getting healthy and the kind of logjam you have in the attack in the front four, I think this is the way to get him on the field, first of all. And, I've alluded to this before, but I also think that fullback is actually like perfectly tailored to his kind of two-way skill set.
Absolutely.
He can use those attributes that he's honed as a right mid, the same attributes as well that he honed during his time as a defensive mid. And, the energy and the work rate that you always know Christian is going to bring, I think it's actually tailored pretty perfectly for the position. And when you have all your weapons healthy in attack, I think this is how you get him in the starting 11. And I don't think that you can have a starting 11 without Christian in it.
Yeah.
Both because of what he brings on the field and in terms of his leadership and his presence. So I was against this at the start. I will say, like when they first started doing the Christian at right back thing again, I was like, okay. I mean, we're doing this again after having already done it 5 years ago. It was a good novelty thing at the time, but you're taking him out of his best position. Like it's okay as like a temporary thing, or if he has to drop back there during a game, but like as any sort of long-term starting position, like no. And that's how I thought of it for a long time. But I gotta say, the last couple weeks here, I've come around on it. And not only have I come around on it, I think if I was making like an ideal 11, I think I would put him. I would
Easily.
put him there.
Yeah. No, dude, he's looked so good there, and he's so much more dynamic than Alex. And not to say that Alex isn't good in that position. I mean, he was one of the best last season, but the way that he'll just get up the field, he has that attacking minded positioning as well. So if he gets caught up the field, he's not really in the way of anyone. Makes so like really good interplay with everyone and will track back. I mean, dude, he has to be on the field, and I'm loving this right back rolled on thing. I will put a caveat. I know you're the official agenda setter, like in terms of like levels. This is near completion. This is near cooked. This is near like it's gotta be, because he's starting there game in and game out. And I think Brian has realized like, oh, this is the spot.
Yeah. It's definitely one worth keeping tabs on going forward. I'm curious to see if they keep rolling with it. Okay. This is a good one. I actually learned a lot in my research regarding this next agenda.
I'm just reading this on the paper, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to cause some stir.
The RBW should start at left back over Nuhu agenda. Okay. Now, when I first posed this agenda, I pretty much thought that I knew already what my take was. And, I think most people know that I've never been as fervently anti-Nuhu as the purveyors of the anti-Nuhu agenda, of which you've been a part at times.
Correct.
Of which some of our colleagues at Sounder of Heart have been at the forefront of at times. I've defended Nuhu from the standpoint of, I think it's pretty clear, honestly, what the value he brings as a player is. I understand the frustration of watching him in attack at times. I share those frustrations, but I think he's quite obviously a very good defensive player, and that's been shown and proven a lot over the years. I mean, this team has been a great defensive team over the last 3 or 4 years. Last year, they were one of the best defensive teams in the league. They won MLS Cup in 2019 and CONCACAF Champions League with Nuhu as a first choice starter. So, like, you really think a team that's been that good, that consistently on defense over that long a period of time, you think Nuhu really just has nothing to do with that? Like, I mean, I doubt it. And you know who understands that? I think Schmetz understands that, because I really don't think Schmetz would be starting Nuhu in MLS Cups and CONCACAF Champions League games and finals if he didn't realize the value that Nuhu brings on the defensive side of the ball. And not to mention, like, just looking at this LAFC game, for instance, where you're going up against a guy like Dennis Bouanga. If you're asking me just off the top of my head, who am I starting between Nuhu and RBW in a game where you have to play against Dennis Bouanga, I'm picking Nuhu every time, both because of his experience, but also because he has the speed and the athleticism to keep up with a guy like that. And like he did pretty well against Dennis Bouanga in the playoffs last year, except for the one play where he scored a goal and it lost them the game.
Which, did that really lose them the game? Because they
got shut out.
Yeah, they couldn't finish. Yeah.
Bouanga is going to get you for one most times you play him. That's just how it goes. Like, for the most part, he did a good job, and that's a lot of the time he's been the starting left back on this team the last few years. That's the level that he's played at on the defensive side of the ball for whatever his attacking shortcomings may be. Okay, so all that being said, I decided to look at the metrics, the underlying numbers for both Nuhu and RBW. Because I looked at Nuhu's first to see if it would validate what I was saying. And I looked at Nuhu's underlying metrics for, obviously his attacking underlying numbers are terrible, but like that's not his role. He's a defender first and foremost, and his defensive metrics are all pretty good. Some of them are very good. And so I was like, okay, I think that basically supports what I'm saying as far as, I was going to advocate for Nuhu being the starter over RBW for the time being. And I felt like what I saw more or less matched up with what I was saying. But then I looked at RBW's metrics, and they're even better than Nuhu's, his defensive metrics. But what I was struck by just was how good they were compared to anyone. I mean, I'm just gonna read some of these off because it was eyebrow raising stuff for me when I saw it. These are RBW's defensive underlying numbers. Passes attempted, 77th percentile, very good.
Damn.
Pass completion percentage, 62nd percentile,
yeah,
pretty solid. Progressive passes, 68th percentile, pretty solid. Progressive carries, 93rd percentile, excellent. Successful take-ons, 96th percentile, excellent. Touches, 49th percentile, but I don't really think that matters as much. Progressive passes recorded, 87th percentile, excellent. Tackles, 91st percentile,
True.
Excellent. Interceptions, 71st percentile, really good. Blocks, 99th percentile,
wow,
elite.
Yeah.
Clearances, 81st percentile, very, very good. Aerials 85th percentile, very, very good, pretty excellent. So RBW, actually, he's like, just looking at those, he's been playing much better, especially on the defensive side of the ball, than I even thought.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, I'm not going to say that I necessarily am going to be the purveyor of this agenda, but I think anyone who would advocate for the RBW should be starting at left back over Nuhu agenda would have actually quite a good leg to stand on. So I actually feel like I learned quite a lot in my research on the topic of this agenda.
You could say that it is statistically strengthened, right? Like, I mean, wow. I'm like shocked because you can see from the eye test, at least, that RBW is way more dynamic in attack. And I feel like he has some of the similar one-on-one defending chops as Nuhu. Like, that first game back, he slide tackled 3 players and won the ball, but man, that's like the numbers. Listen, both know I'm not a numbers guy unless they support my cause. So folks, listen to the numbers here. I'll be the purveyor. All right. I'll be the purveyor.
Yeah. I was just, I kind of couldn't believe what I was seeing. I think what it brings up too is like an interesting debate over what exactly RBW's best position should be, because, there's been talk over whether he should be a winger or a fullback. And when I see numbers like this, I'm thinking, okay, I understand why he's kind of being seen as a fullback more than an attacking winger. But I also think there might be something to the notion that a two-way skill set like that can be very valuable as an attacking player. Like we saw that with what Christian brought when he was at right mid, right? So I think there's a discussion to be had still over whether RBW should be a fullback or if they should play him higher up the field. But for now, it very much seems like he is not only a viable starting MLS fullback, it seems like he could be a very, very good one.
Yeah. Get him in there more. Let's get more minutes. Let's start him.
This agenda is just starting, but I'm down to be the purveyor. The last agenda check I have here, this is a new agenda that I'm not saying that it's taken hold yet, but I'm going to lay the groundwork, okay? It's the Albert Rusnak and Jordan Morris is the best 1-2 punch in the league.
This is somehow
agenda.
Spicier than the last one, I think, Ari.
Well, it's very spicy, and I understand. Okay, so you can't call this call this agenda complete or anything until we see them do it over more of a sample size. Like, I get that. They've only done it over the last, 10 games or so, and there are other duos in the league who have been doing it all season or even dating back to last season. You got guys like Cucho Hernandez and Diego Rossi who have been doing it over a much larger sample size. Bouanga and Matthias Bogus for LAFC, who we're going to see this weekend, they've both been doing it over a much larger sample size. I'm not including Inter Miami in this. They don't count. They're essentially cheating. The Messi and Suarez, obviously, they don't count. They're not factored into this discussion. But for the non-Inter Miami teams, there are definitely 1-2 punches that you would have to put over Rusnak and Morris right now, just on the basis of that they've done it over a much longer period of time. However, the reason I wanted to lay the groundwork for the agenda is because there's still a lot of games left this season for them to maintain this pace, or even all they have to do is maintain 75 to 80% of the pace that they've been on over the last couple weeks throughout the rest of the season, and then they'll theoretically have playoff games to add on to that. If they're able to keep cooking at this level through that stretch of games, who knows? I mean, maybe there will come a time where they have to be acknowledged up there with some of the better 1-2 punches in MLS at the moment. And I think the longer they do it, I'll tell you this, the longer they do it, you're not only going to just hear me pushing this agenda, the national pundits will start to take notice as well. The only reason that they're not taking notice already is because it's only been this most recent set of games. So without falling victim to recency bias, I'm just saying that this agenda could actually take off if they continue to play. Even it doesn't even have, the pace they're on right now is ridiculous. No, it would be impossible to sustain that. But if they keep in roughly this form, I think it could have wheels.
I feel like Albert isn't slowing down though. Maybe Jordan slows down a little bit on his scoring production, but I don't know, dude. Albert's a man possessed. I could see this. I could see him potentially, being nominated as a finalist for an end of season award if he keeps, at this pace. Something has been unlocked in him. And, one of the things that while we were both frustrated with the not laying it off to Paul Rothrock, it shows how also locked in Jordan is and trusting in his own ability. When those two are on and focused, man, that's some scary football right there.
All right, that'll do it for the agenda check this week. I think that was a good agenda check. Like I said, I actually got some more depth of knowledge from it, and I'm interested to keep track of these more moving forward. And if you have any agendas that you would like to push and that you want to hear us talk about, go ahead and hit us up on Twitter. And if we think that they're good agendas, then we'll talk them over and tell you if they're diminished or strengthened. All right, let's get into questions, Noah. We have a few here. Thank you, as always, to everyone who submitted. We really appreciate you all getting the discourse flowing. No, we can't get to every single one of you every week, but we try our best to get it to as many as we can. So let's dive in here.
Let's dive in. Ari, did you miss me asking you the questions this past week when you had to solo pod it?
I did, actually. Yeah, it felt weird.
Yeah, I was listening to it and I was like, man, I should have been there. But I'm here now, and we're going to get things rolling here with Mikey Six Strings asks, Rothrock brings that drive to the field that has been missing since Ladero left. He's got that engine and also takes a plethora of fouls just like Nico used to do.
Yeah, that's actually a good comp that I hadn't really thought of before, but and we hadn't really done our big Rothrock segment yet. So thanks for getting that going, Mikey. Let's do it now.
Yeah, we better dive in.
Well, so Jeremiah also tweeted the stats on this, but he didn't get on the stat sheet last night, and Jordan didn't lay it off to him for the goal, but he had a great game. He drew 5 fouls. He drew the foul that set up the free kick that Rusnak put in for the Jon Bell goal, and that is very much an attribute that I think Nico is probably the best foul drawer that I've ever watched.
Easily.
That was one of his best skills, was his ability to to draw fouls, and he actually taught that to Obed. Like that's one of the first things I noticed watching Obed play is that how good he is at drawing fouls, and I always felt like he probably got that from Nico. But Rothrock was definitely doing that last night, and yeah, he's just kind of he's a pest a little bit in a similar way, and really to me he he's talked about how when he first got here and was playing for Defiance. It might have been his last opportunity. And he was saying like, all right, if this doesn't work out and I don't break through with the first team here and I end up kind of just spinning my wheels, like I might have to go get a job. And I think that he kind of channeled that into a mindset of, fuck it. Like I got nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose. And I'm going to play like that every single time I'm on the training ground, every single time I get into a game. Like I'm just going to play with my hair on fire because like if I don't make it, like that's it. So like what's it matter? I'm just going to go for it. And I think that's manifested itself in just like the energy he brings, the juice that he's playing with, the swagger that he's brought to the team. And I like that Ladero comp because the way he was buzzing around and drawing those fouls, it was reminiscent,
Yeah, dude, it's so fun to watch him play. Like it is genuinely fun to watch him play. He reminds me of like a million different players, but I love the Ladero comp. I love it even more because he's becoming such a fan favorite. Like everyone around me was so stoked when he was starting, and everyone around me was like just eyes glued to the field every time he would get the ball. I saw someone tweeted at me a whole family with Rothrock jerseys, which might have been his family, but we're going to go with the agenda that it's just a fan favorite. And even better, we are purveyors, Ari. We are purveyors. The first ever episode of Lobbing Scorchers was literally titled Play Paul Rothrock or whatever. Like
it was Paul Rothrock needs some help because he was the only one scoring goals.
Yeah, like I don't know, dude. It's been so fun to watch this kid, and he is He's genuinely a good player. He's genuinely a good player with incredible like vision for the game. And Brian even said that last night after the match. He's just, I don't know, dude. Please never stop playing, Paul. Please never stop playing. Next question comes from Dan Toller. Dan asks, what do you think about Schmetzer's recent comments that the Sounders were just getting unlucky early in the year and that now things are falling their way? Were the Sounders okay and unlucky to start, and now are they just okay but lucky? Or has there been genuine improvement in form?
Yeah, I think there actually is something to what Schmetz was saying with that, in the sense that, when you go through a stretch of the season where nothing seems to be going your way, those things do tend to even out over the course of a whole season. And earlier this season, Seattle were XG merchants. All the breaks were going against them. And now over this last stretch of games, it really feels like the exact opposite. Like everything's going their way.
Yeah,
they're getting insanely lucky right now. But I think what you're seeing is what happens when your luck turns around and your form turns around at the same time. And that's what's been fun to watch. But I mean, to answer the second part of your question, there has been genuine improvement in form. I think it's both things. I think their luck has turned around, as those things tend to do over the course of a full season, and they're playing much better. And the result of that has been the huge change in results, and it's been super fun to watch.
Yeah, it's not every day when a team is really bad or just performing pretty bad and nothing is going their way. And I feel like the beginning of the season, it felt like that. I was watching those games and I was like, I never really stopped and was like, oh, we should be winning these games. It was like, wow, we just look terrible. And there was a switch, there was a turn, and now you're like, okay, yeah, this team looks really good, and also they're getting lucky. So, maybe they drop a few points here and there because they get unlucky, but they were still able to keep themselves afloat enough through those really rough times to where now it doesn't even look that bad. And yeah, I agree with you. I think there genuinely has been a big improvement in form. A United Ghost asks, is Obed Vargas the best midfielder on this team right now?
I mean, I guess I don't know if you are separating attacking midfielders from defensive mids, but assuming we're talking all midfielders, I mean, I've still got Albert. But, I mean, the fact that Obed's in the conversation for that should tell you about the type of ball that he's been playing this year.
I'll purvey this one. You know what? I'm going to go for it. I think he might be. Just the growth that we've seen from him and the consistency from the beginning of the season till now. You know, Albert kind of started off slow and now he's super hot. We'll see over the rest of the season, but I'm going to miss him when they sell him for like a big bag because he's point. So good.
It's a good point. Rusnak's form has really been over like this last smaller stretch of games, whereas he's been playing like this all year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that is a point in favor of that agenda. You know, you got JP in the mix there as well. It's a good debate, but I like that agenda.
Yeah. All right. Next up here, we have a question from Jim C. Not that Jim C, but could be that Jim C. Jim C asks, new agenda. Jordan Morris for the USMNT number 9. Too soon?
Don't tempt me with that agenda. I've been down that road, and I became a main character among the USMNT bots for a while for being a purveyor of that agenda. It was really only for a day, and I actually regret that because I threw gasoline on a fire with that when I didn't really need to. It was during like peak COVID quarantine times.
Oh, yikes, yeah.
And I think I was just angry and bored and needed something to do, and that's more why I did it than anything. But
don't back off now.
I've been there.
Double down, Ari. Double down.
Hey, I mean, here's what I'll say, man. If they had called him in for the Copa, maybe the U.S. men's national fraud squad wouldn't have gotten grouped.
I mean, couldn't have been much worse. I gotta say, he might have provided a little veteran leadership that was needed. I'm purveying that one too. Jordan Morris, number 9. They would have won. They would have won the whole tournament if he was playing for them. But you can't disagree with me because it didn't happen. So, Sammy asks, is the Sounders trade with Toronto FC for Stephen Fry one of the greatest in MLS history? Now, they traded a conditional draft pick for Stephen Fry. So they basically traded nothing for the greatest MLS goalkeeper of all time.
Yeah, I always forget that was the trade that brought Fry to Seattle. It's funny to look back on that. I wonder who that conditional draft pick turned into.
Yeah, someone figure that out and tweet us.
It's it doesn't get talked about enough that the goalkeeper that, you know, I think Fry, if you're just going by trophy case, you know, you got Nick Raimondo, and who's considered the consensus MLS GOAT goalkeeper. You know, Tim Howard played here, but like in terms of just like decorated trophy case, Fry is one of the best. He's probably the best MLS goalkeeper ever. Like by that criteria, when you take into account the 2 MLS Cups with the CONCACAF Champions League, with the Supporters Shield, with the Open Cup, I don't know how many goalkeepers have that many trophies. So. I think, like, I don't know. I'd have to go back through the history of lopsided MLS trades, but that's got to be up there for among the most lopsided.
I don't even think I could conjure up a better trade or a more one-sided trade that is in MLS history. Well, thank you all for your questions. We love you. We kiss you on the mouth. If you didn't get your question answered, I'm so sorry. Go scream at Ari in the mentions next time.
We appreciate all of you for getting the discourse flowing, as always. All right, let's get into this LAFC preview, and then we'll jump around the league, talk some Cavan Sullivan and winners and losers, and then we'll get out of here for episode 52. Does that sound good, Noah?
Let's do it.
All right, so LAFC, what I can tell you guys about LAFC is that they're actually down pretty bad right now in their last 2 results. I talked about it on the last show, but they lost to the Columbus Crew at home, and they didn't just lose. They got they got boat raced. They got embarrassed at their home stadium, 5-1, gave up 5 goals. And then in their game last night they tied RSL at home, who, you know, you could look at it and say RSL is also one of the best teams in the league this year. They've been up there competing for the Supporters Shield all season. But RSL didn't have Chicho Arango. And I would expect LAFC to be able to handle Chicho Arango-less RSL. I think if there's one kind of flaw with RSL right now, it's that they're kind of giving me the vibes of like a Nashville SC relying on Haney Mukhtar, or Austin FC with Sebastian Driussi. You take Arango off that RSL side, they're suddenly a lot less potent. And LAFC, a 1-1 at home versus Chicho-less RSL for LAFC, that's not a good result.
No.
5-1 against the Crew, obviously a very bad result. So they're not playing well over these last 2 games. So if there's anything working in Seattle's favor as the home team, you're catching LAFC ostensibly at a time where they are not playing their best soccer. However, I'll just say I never feel good about facing LAFC. Denis Bouanga in particular, he terrifies me. I think he is the most uniquely terrifying player in the league when he gets out and running. You shouldn't be able to run that fast with that much power and then also be able to shoot that accurately. He does when he shoots it on target, it pretty much always goes in. He doesn't miss. I see that goal that he scored in the playoffs in Seattle last year in my nightmares regularly.
Yeah, literally.
He is an evil, demonic force of nature, and I want nothing to do with that guy. I don't want to see him. I don't want to see him outside of soccer context or anything. Like I want no part of that. But unfortunately, he's going to be here in Seattle, and anytime he's involved in the proceedings, I'm not looking forward to it. Like with him on the team, he scares me even more than the 2019 LAFC team that had Carlos Vela score 34 and 15, because just the physical power and speed that he possesses. I mean, it's like if you took Jordan and souped him up with like a bunch of steroids and then gave him like a turbo jetpack and put him on the soccer field. That's
and
like
gave him a better finesse touch and
a little
everything.
more technical ability. And I just don't want to see that guy. If I never saw him again, I would be happy.
Dude, he hasn't even hit 100 matches with LAFC, and he has 55 goals, 84 appearances and 55 goals. That will haunt you.
It's scary. But I mean, yeah, with all that being said, I do think that a result is attainable for Seattle in this game. And, you know, with LAFC's form right now, I don't think a win is out of the question. I think a lot of it comes down to what degree Nuhu and company are able to slow down Denis Bouanga or neutralize him. If you can do that, your chances go way up, certainly. And I just think you're catching them in a moment where, like right before this, the set of games before this, they were the hottest team in the league. They took 28 out of a possible 30 points. So, if you had been playing them at that point, then, you know, I think I would feel differently about it. But looking at these last 2 results, they have looked more vulnerable in this most recent period of time. But, you know, that could also mean that they're going to come in here pissed off and that they're going to play even better. So we'll see how it pans out. But LAFC, they have not looked like the juggernaut LAFC the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get a get-back game. Like that Western, the playoff match, that was... I'm literally losing my words because I was so frustrated at that goal in that game, but I couldn't be mad because, you know, Denny Bouanga is basically Jesus reincarnated. I'm hoping that we can take a draw from this one. I guess I'm a little less confident than you. I think that it's going to come down to the Nuhu and company slowing him down, but I don't know if they can completely. I think they'll probably get one. I think it's going to come down to Jordan and Albert and Pedro really making an impact in this game and scoring multiple goals.
Yeah, and like we mentioned earlier, I'm definitely hoping that we get to see a lengthy De La Vega shift in this game. You know, I obviously you gotta make sure he doesn't do his hamstring, but theoretically he should be in a place having rested for this last game where they can give him a 50 to 60 minute run and see what he can do, and that could be an X factor in this game as well. All right, let's jump around the league here and then do winners and losers to close it out, and then we'll call it a wrap for episode 52. First thing I wanted to talk about was I mean this was the biggest headline that went on in Matchday 27 in MLS, and really one of the biggest stories in pro sports yesterday. Cavan Sullivan made his debut for the Philadelphia Union. 14 years old, 293 days.
Wow.
What were you doing when you were 14? Breaks the long hold record of Freddie Adu, who was 14 years, 320 days. So this was obviously a big milestone moment for the league. You know, Cavan Sullivan, he's the brother of Quinn Sullivan, who's another Philly Union homegrown. Their dad was a former professional player, so they're just this born and bred Philly family. There's like two more of them. It's like an army of Sullivans.
They're rebuilding the U.S. men's national team.
They're taking over. But Cavan has long been considered, at least in the last couple years, I mean, to be the best one. But he made his debut last night, and there was a lot of discourse about it, and a lot of it was more negative than I would have thought. You know, there was a lot of people saying that he was being overhyped. They shouldn't be doing this. He's too young to be debuting. They're Freddie Aduing him because, you know, as we all know, Freddie Adu is like the name you bring up as a cautionary tale for hyping an athlete when they're too young before they're ready. But I'll just give my take on some of this because I do see both sides of it. Like when I first saw he was debuting, you know, we were told a little bit beforehand to get our content planning going. So we knew that this was likely to happen and that it was likely to happen in a time frame where he would end up breaking Freddie's record. And so when I first saw that it was going to happen, I'm not going to lie, there was part of me that was like, this feels like a potential safety hazard.
Yeah.
He's not like a big kid. Like Freddie Adu was 2004, so I don't remember that well. I was 12 in 2004.
I was literally 4.
But I've gone back and watched the highlights, and I've seen like the DC United days and stuff, and he looked like a big kid, you know. Cavan looks like he's 14. Like he looks like he's in 9th grade because he is. So like the thought of him going up against MLS, like can you imagine him going up against Ymar? Like,
no, no.
I was low key a little bit worried about it from that perspective. But I mean, as for his debut itself, I actually like he more than held his own. He definitely looked like he belonged out there. He had one play in particular where they got him out and running on the break, and he made a run down the left side, and he lined up a shot from distance. And it got saved, but it was like a pretty good looking shot. And he didn't look like overmatched or out of his depth in the brief time that he was on the field. You know, Philly was ahead 5-1 by the time he got on the field, so it was relatively low stakes in that sense. But yeah, he still got out there at 14 years old, like definitely historic, record-breaking moment. My take on all the hype, like if he's being overhyped and all that, like the only thing, what I'll say about that is like pedigree like this, it comes along every so often, and it's never going to just come completely out of nowhere, okay? There's a reason that Manchester City has already made a deal for him to come join their club when he turns 18. And he would probably, I think he would be headed over there sooner, but it's like you can't legally do that.
Yeah.
But Manchester City has scouted him and watched him play, and they've decided that they want him. And that kind of speaks to like what the scouts and the pundits say about him is that he's not the best player for his age just in the U.S., just in this country. He's the best player for his age in the world. That's not like me saying that and then or me
You're not
like
agenda
bestowing
pushing.
that.
Yeah.
I'm not agenda pushing and bestowing that on him from like what I have watched of him play. That's just what the scouts and the pundits are saying, that he's the best prospect for his age in the world. And I mean, I think that's supported by the fact that he's already signed with Manchester City. So the other thing is that like Jim Curt and the Philly staff, they know ball.
Yeah.
And they know youth development. So if they watch him train and they think that he's ready to play in an MLS game, they're not going to just say that for no reason. And they're certainly not going to put him out there in an MLS game if they didn't absolutely believe and were convicted in their thought that he was ready to do that, and that if they put him out there, like not only would he hold his own, but that he could positively contribute. I've heard Jim Curtin talk about it. I saw his quotes. You know, he had a quote the other day where he was like, yeah, I mean, we have him training with the first team, and every time he's in first team training, he does 2 or 3 things where I'm just like, what did I just see? Like, and you know, I went and looked up his highlights on YouTube a little bit because, you know, when he signed with Manchester City, I was like, okay, I have to Manchester City. All right, I have to look.
You got to lock in.
I got to see these highlights for myself. What's this all about? And I will say, like, I think the thing that stands out more than anything is his unselfishness and his vision and his ability already at 14 to find and hit these passes that it's the type of thing that's like God-given. Like you can't really teach that. You either have it or you don't. And not only does he have it, like he seems to have it at an elite level, like already. So that's basically what I had to say about that. I'm curious to see if he can live up to this level of hype, because it's definitely a lot. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, for a 14-year-old to be kind of taking all this on his shoulders, I can see why some people might think it's too much. But I guess my point is just that it's definitely not for no reason. It's not for no reason. You don't get signed by Manchester City when you're 14 for no reason. The Philly Union don't put you out there in a first team game when you're 14 for no reason. Like, you have to have shown some stuff to do that. Yeah,
and I've seen, you know, funny enough, actually, I saw a lot of the USMNT bots getting absolutely triggered by them playing him, and in this whole idea that like the promotion and the MLS like doing a sit down interview with him and like doing some silly Twitter video about it is somehow gonna like ruin this player.
Shouldn't they be hyped?
Yeah, shouldn't they be excited? Like I really don't get the hate. You know, the bigger thing to me is like he's surrounded by people who are fully aware of his situation and how to handle it. Like, he has an older brother who has been playing in MLS for multiple years now.
He scored a banger right before he subbed on.
Yeah, and like I think that if anyone is in a position to succeed and do well with young, not that anyone's going to do well with young fame, but like with this like weight on their shoulders or perceived weight, I feel like he's in a pretty damn good position to hold up his end of the bargain. And even if he's not, he looks really excited to be out there.
He was vibing. He was having the time of his life. You could tell.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't understand the hate. I'm so stoked to see him play, and I'm even more stoked. You know, once he goes to City, it'll be great. But we're definitely lucky to be able to get to watch him play.
I'm just curious as much as anything, because like, you know, phenoms like this, it can go one of two ways for sure. Like, people point to Freddie Adu as the reason that like that you should never hype an athlete like that. But, you know, there's stories on the other side of that as well. You got guys like, if we're doing cross sport comparisons, you got guys like LeBron was hyped in a similar way to this. Like in baseball, Bryce Harper, I remember when I was in high school, we're the same age. Like, he was hyped like this. I put sort of this situation is he's kind of the MLS version of that. And I think Pulisic's probably the closest young phenom, but even he didn't go to Germany.
Yeah.
He went to Germany when he was 16. But I don't think he was even being talked about making like a senior team debut when he was 14.
I mean,
so this is a little bit different territory than we've seen for a prospect in this country. I've never, like, when I heard that the scouts and pundits were saying he was the best player his age in the world, I mean, that raises eyebrows. These are scouts from other countries. Like, you understand that? Like,
yeah.
These are scouts from other countries who watched him play and said that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scout, but like, they're not going to just say that.
No, and dude, it's not unprecedented for people who start at the age of 14 to go on and have an incredible career. Maybe in soccer, it's less surprising, but Serena Williams turned pro when she was 14, and she went on to be one of the best in the world. Not that, not to compare apples to oranges, but like, it's possible. The age thing is one thing. The way that he plays and watching him play, he clearly has a level to him that can be expanded upon and built on to be one of the best at least in his class.
Yeah, we'll certainly be keeping tabs on how much he plays for Philly down the stretch here and what other milestones he checks off the list. All right. No, I think you had one news item here you wanted to hit on, and then we can hit winners and losers and then get out of here.
Yeah, we got some Slammin' Sam news.
Oh, hell yeah.
Big Slammin' Sam news. This dude, I feel like we've become like a partial union podcast, the amount we bam on them and the amount we've brought up with the news
They're
items.
making a lot of headlines right now.
They are Slammin' Sam is apparently in a potential trade with the Union from St. Louis, and could still potentially be going to Austria after that. The Sounders retain their sell-on for another year, and it was confirmed that they've already been paid out $200K in GAMs so far from Slammin' Sam in the trade. I just thought that was interesting because that's a good bag for Slammin' Sam.
Yeah, so Slammin' Sam went through a bunch of drama in St. Louis this year. He had a really good year for them last year after the Sounders traded him there. It seemed like he had a falling out with the coach, and that coach got fired, but now he's on his way to Philly. But seeing that the Sounders have collected $200K in GAM from that trade, makes me feel a little bit better about that trade. Like when we spent a lot of time last season talking about how Hebert was being an XG merchant and how much better things could have been if they had just not traded Slammin' Sam. But kind of based on how things ended for him in St. Louis, where he's at in his career now, and the amount of GAM that Seattle is stacking with this latest development, I think it kind of paints that trade in a different light. It makes me feel a little better about it.
Yeah, I'm not too upset about it anymore, but we wish Slammin' Sam the absolute best.
It's a pro Slammin' Sam.
Yeah, it's a pro Slammin' Sam podcast, but
all right, let's hit these winners and losers, and then we can call it a wrap for episode 52. Winners and losers from Matchday 27. My first winner, Chicago Fire. No, they took a 1-0 lead at FC Cincinnati, and they didn't blow it.
They didn't blow it?
They didn't blow it. It was a very depleted FC Cincinnati squad. They didn't have Lucho Acosta. Matt Miazga's out for the season. Miles Robinson was out with a red card suspension. I think they had a couple other guys out, too. And then their coach, Pat Noonan, had one of the better sideline temper tantrums that you'll ever see and got a red card in that game. But either way, Chicago's homegrown Brian Gutierrez scored the game-winning goal, and they did not concede the equalizer, which, as we know, that is what the Chicago Fire typically do in that situation, and they didn't do it. And for that, they get in the winners section this week.
Congratulations, Chicago Fire.
Good job, Chicago Fire. You kept the lead. Inter Miami, they lost to FC Cincinnati 6-1 in their last game. But if you look at their whole body of work since Messi and Suarez went to the Copa, they won every single game except that Cincinnati blowout. And they won like the first 5 of them 2-1. And then this time, coming off that Cincy loss, they got a pretty easy 3-1 win over Toronto. And it just kind of reinforces that this is the most loaded MLS roster I've ever seen. Like before you even get to Messi, Suarez, Busquets, and Jordi Alba, like the kids that were carrying them in this game, Federico Redondo is like he was one of the best prospects coming out of Argentina, and they got him. That would be like a big time signing, like independent of all the other stuff they've done.
Yeah.
But it doesn't even get talked about because of all the other guys that they got. But like he scored a goal in this game and looks really good. Diego Gomez, same thing. That would be a big time signing for like any other team. So those guys, like I think Suarez was back for this. Messi busted his ankle at the Copa, so he didn't play. I mean, I think we'll see what happens like with Messi's health and if like all these Barca boys can make it through full season intact. But Inter Miami is pretty easily the Supporters Shield front runner, in my opinion. Like I think people can like kid themselves into thinking there's any other outcome there, and maybe there is, like if they have a ton of injuries, but it's just too much firepower at a certain point. Yeah, I didn't even mention Matias Rojas.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy. And like Messi, I saw some articles that were saying, "Oh my God, Inter Miami's season is." With this Messi injury, it's, it could be over. Their Supporters Shield race could be over. I'm like, have you guys not been watching this team over the last month? And then they have one more game, and then they go into a month of Leagues Cup, which I'm sure they care to contend for, but like at this point,
they already won it last year.
They won it, and they're going for MLS Cup and Supporters Shield right now, which they they have a good shot of winning if they can keep healthy. So let's say they sit Messi for a month, he heals, they're right back at it, and they're not, they may never lose a game again.
Yeah. No, like you're right. Like after the 6-1, people were talking about it. I just don't buy it for a second.
No, me neither.
Last winner of the week, LA Galaxy beat a pretty good Rapids team 3-2. Ricky Puig and Joey Paints both scored.
My Kings.
Yeah, if you haven't watched it yet, go watch the goal that Joey Paints scored. It was all Gabriel Peck that made it happen. He made an incredible run down the right side, and then a perfect pass to find Joey Paints for a tap in, which he roofed. Gabriel Peck is up to 9 goals, 11 assists this season, and Joey Paints has 8 and 8. I mean, that's just fantastic production from your wide attackers. They really, their front office deserves a lot of credit for those two signings in particular. I mean, that Ricky Puig, it doesn't really get talked about kind of how crazy it is that this 22-year-old Barcelona kid came to MLS. Like usually they're not that young when they do that. So that was a great signing in itself. But
they got him on a free.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But now you flank him with Joey Paints and Gabriel Peck. They need Joveljic back, but they've also been linked to Marco Reus.
Yeah.
So imagine that as your super sub. Like they could be getting, if they pull that off, they could be getting even better. But that was definitely a good dub for them this week because the Rapids are actually having a pretty decent year. Losers, Minnesota United.
They're in the gutter, dude.
They are down about as bad as any team in the league. They let DC United come back late and beat them 3-2 at home. They were up 2-1 in the 90th minute. They're up 2-1 in the 90th minute. Let Aaron Herrera score the equalizer in the 90th, and then Christian Benteke score the winner in the 91st. You're down bad. I touted their head coach, Eric Ramsey, when he first got there. I think he's been dealt a bit of a tough hand with where their roster's at. I think losing Emmanuel Reynoso, with him going missing and then no longer being on the team, and Timo Pukki being injured and not really producing, it's caught up with them pretty decidedly. But that was they pulled a Philly Union, essentially, is what they did.
Chicago Fire, Philly Union, and all that.
They pulled a Philly Union against the Chicago Fire.
Yeah.
That's what they did against DCU, who DCU's been one of the worst teams in the East this year, so that makes it even worse for the Loons. Down bad. Nashville SC lost 3-0 at home to Orlando City SC. They're down horrendously bad. Orlando City are they're heating up in the same way that like Seattle and Portland and like some of these other teams that have got off to slow starts and have been turning it around lately. Orlando's kind of doing that right now, and they're also flying under the radar of the national pundits a little bit, I would say. But still, Nashville SC, ever since they fired Gary Smith, they've kind of torpedoed. They're in the tank. This was a national.
That was such a silly firing too, I feel like.
Well, yes, I could see both sides of it because Gary Smith he established a very solid floor for them, but it seemed like he also had a pretty capped ceiling. And the story with them is that they were very solid defensively. They're hard to break down, but then they had Haney Mukhtar, and that was pretty much it. They added Sam Surridge, but that didn't turn out to move the needle that much. And, I could see why they probably felt like they needed a new voice and new blood to kind of take them into a new era. But what's happened for this season is they've totally tanked. They look like one of the worst teams in the league right now. And anytime you lose by 3 goals at home, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, that's not good scenes.
And then finally, Austin FC 3-1 Copo Tejas
This was
rivalry
spicy.
defeat to FC Dallas. This was very spicy. Sebastian Driussi ended up getting a red card in this game after it was originally given to Julio Cascante. What happened was FC Dallas striker Pilar Musa converted a penalty kick. He started talking trash. The teams were jawing back and forth. Cascante, the ref thought that Cascante punched a guy, but then it turned out that it was actually Driussi. So Driussi got sent off. Austin FC lose again. And Austin FC, their fans I think are the most disgruntled in the league right now.
Hands down.
I found a really hilarious YouTube channel called it's like Austin Fan TV or something. And so I was watching their the video that they made after the Seattle game, and it's just this kid standing outside with a microphone, and he just goes up to random fans and he says, he literally says the same thing every time. He's like, 1-0 loss to Seattle. What did you think of the game? And then he just lets the fans just pop off. So he was talking to the guy who actually paid for the plane to fly Austin Fans Deserve Better Wolf Out. That's awesome. Before the Seattle game. And that guy was, defending his probably like $10,000 purchase. I mean, it can't have been cheap. And it was Josh Wolf is spelled with 2 F's, but they only put 1 F on the banner. So that was funny too. But then pretty much.
He had to pay an extra $1,000 for the other app.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
like, fuck it.
Well, people will get it. People will get it. But anyway, Austin FC fans they're really locked in on the Wolf Out train, and it doesn't seem like they're getting off it anytime soon.
No, I mean, I feel bad for them because we were on Wolf Out at the beginning of the season, and we thought he was on the hottest seat of them all. And somehow he has survived. Somehow.
All right, I think that can just about do it for episode 52. Thank you all so much for tuning in and bearing with us on the delay. We're sorry about that. That's easily the worst technology debacle that we've had in Lobbing Scorchers history.
We had a rough technology week.
Yeah. Losing an hour and a half of really good audio was among the more painful experiences I've had in my life. Certainly the most painful podcasting experience to date, but we powered through it, and we appreciate you all bearing with us and on the delayed timeline. I mean, we'll be back on our normal schedule after this episode. This was just a freak confluence of events. But as always, thank you all so much for the support and for the increased listenership that we've seen in the last few weeks. Like, comment, rate, subscribe,
share
write reviews.
With Josh Wolf 1F.
Share with Josh Wolf. Share with everyone you know. We'll see you all for episode 53. Until next time, we out.
Peace.